At the urging of Kelly and David, my administration took historic action to protect growers of Georgia blueberries, peppers, squash, and cucumbers. Who does cucumbers around here? Because I like cucumbers. I'm the only one. I like cucumbers.
Who makes cucumbers? And Mr. Trump has been extremely busy sending cucumbers to the GOP in Georgia while pocketing money in the name of winning the 2 Senate seats. His campaign has been sending messages to Republicans around the country asking them to send him money so that the GOP can win Georgia. But unless someone sends more than $8,000, which no one is ever going to send, Trump's super PAC will keep all the money. Trump is taking money from other people and lining up his own pockets. That's new. How did that happen?
So when the Washington Post's David Fahrenthold dropped this scoop today that President Trump charges his own Secret Service agents as much as $650 a night per room when he stays at one of his properties, that he's charged the Secret Service $17,000 a month for a cottage on one of his properties, a rate that appears to be at least double the highest comparable rental rate nearby, that the Trump administration has lied about these charges, saying publicly that they're actually charging the Secret Service nothing or almost nothing to stay on their properties when they're in fact charging them what appears to be the rack rate. Well, all that reporting, I mean, that is quite a scoop. But it's the kind of scoop that isn't necessarily surprising, given what we know about how the president likes to butter his own cup at taxpayer expense.
The GOP watched him butter his own cup with taxpayers' money. Now, they are watching him butter his cup with GOP money. And butter he does. But don't you worry, the GOP is actually flush with cash for the runoffs in Georgia. Spending is expected to hit more than $400 million, with the GOP spending around $244 million, while $150 plus million is spent by the Democrats. But hey, GOP, money does not win you elections. Ask the Democrats. They will tell you how many millions they spent in Kentucky, South Carolina, and Maine and lost all of them. They booked so many ads on TV that the TV networks forgot who they were actually working for. And the Republicans are now doing the same, sweeping the airwaves in Georgia, that you can rename the local networks as Republic TV. It has been almost a week since early voting began in Georgia for the 2 Senate runoffs, and people are voting.
Yeah, let's start in Georgia, where voters are coming out in record numbers now for that high-stakes Senate runoff. Early in-person voting began on Monday, and the turnout eclipsed the record set on the first day of early voting in the weeks before the November 3rd election. The New York Times reports this: on Monday, during the first day of in-person early voting, about 168,000 Georgia voters showed up at the polls. By comparison, nearly 129,000 people cast ballots on the first day of early voting for the general election, and nearly 91,000 people voted on the first day of the 2016 election.
As of Monday morning, 1.3 million people have already voted in the Senate runoffs, which is a little more than 20% of the general election turnout. And we still have 2 more weeks of voting left, and then there is election day voting as well. Comparing the turnout to the general election after 1 week of early voting, Georgia has got 25% less votes by mail, while early in-person voting increased by 9%. So overall, the total turnout after 7 days of early voting in the Senate runoffs is only down 7% compared to the general election. That is actually a healthy number for a runoff. And if the current pace is sustained, we may end up getting closer to the 5 million votes that were received in the general election, which is nothing short of a miracle, considering the fact that we don't have the 2 old white men on the ballot. After all these years, we need old white men to be on the ballot to get people to vote. Who would have thought we would be here in 2020?
You know, the key challenge, right? If you're Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, is turnout in this runoff, and it is historically, we all know that turnout, that runoff elections tend to be low turnout affairs. You usually see, even after sometimes even particularly after a big turnout election like you had in the presidential election in Georgia, you see turnout fall off the cliff 2 months later. The irregular voters don't come out. Only the hardcore partisans, most regular voters show up, and that sort of reinforces the normal partisan dynamic. So that would be a good outcome for David Perdue and for Kelly Loeffler. So everyone's looking at like what's going to happen with turnout in Georgia. And Willie, you cited those in-person early vote numbers. They blew the doors off on the first day, and it's been going on all week. And it looks a lot like what it looked like in Georgia in the run-up to the November election. But here's the other thing: in the November elections, they did 1.3 million vote by mail absentee votes. Okay, 1.3 million, about a quarter of the total votes in Georgia, which is about 5 million. About a quarter were absentee ballots by mail, right? The number that have been requested for the runoff, they sent out 1.6 million ballots. So they're up 300,000 over the general election in November, which is like unprecedented. And if 1.6 million ballots come in by mail and this in-person early voting continues on this path, it is really good news for Ossoff and Warnock. Now, that doesn't
people are voting, and they are voting in record numbers for the runoff. Isn't that great news for Democrats? It's actually half great news. The Democrats are happy to see their base is turning out instead of watching TV as they usually do. But the Republican base is also turning out as well, even after watching Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax. I think I have found the difference between Democratic voters and Republican voters. The Democrats watch TV instead of voting, and the Republicans watch TV in order to vote. These guys act so crazy throughout the year, and tell them it's the election, then every single one of them will line up to vote. So what's happening in Georgia? Let us take a small dive into two counties, one Democratic county and one Republican county, to understand what in the heck is going on inside Georgia. DeKalb is one of the largest Democratic counties in the state, where 366,000 people voted in the general election. Biden and Ossoff cleaned up more than 80% of the votes in DeKalb. Cherokee, on the other hand, is a Republican county, where 144,000 people voted in the general election. Cherokee is filled with Trump voters, as Trump got nearly 68% of the voters in this county. As of Monday, DeKalb had 32% of the general election turnout, while Cherokee had 23%. Trump County is slightly behind, but not so far behind that they will not be able to catch up with the Democrats with election day votes. So does that mean Republicans win and Democrats lose? No, not really. What this means is we are seeing a healthy turnout on both sides. The numbers are looking good for the Georgia Senate race to get closer to the crucial 5 million votes we received in the general election. Georgia is heading towards a photo finish. Neither party has pulled ahead of the other to the extent that they can take their foot off the pedal. The results are going to be razor tight unless something gives in the next 2 weeks. The Democrats are supposed to lose both the races, but at the end of the first quarter, the GOP has one touchdown and the Democrats have one. And we have to wait until the last few minutes of the fourth quarter to see who can win. Over and out. Thanks for watching. If you like, please subscribe.